Hi guys, just to let you know that I have a promo of another podcast that I would love for you to listen to, playing at the very end of this episode, so please stay tuned until then. Hi M&Ms, welcome back to another episode of Murder and More. As always, I am your host, Kira. The idea of being murdered by a complete stranger is a significant fear that has been mentioned several times on this podcast. However, more recently, has been discussed at length in the news and on social media following the murder of Sarah Everard. This horrific murder has solidified women's fear around walking alone in the dark and has ignited significant conversations surrounding women's trepidations and how men can make us feel safer. According to a recent survey by UN Women UK, 97% of women in the UK have experienced sexual harassment. In May 2000, Anne Cook was a 35-year-old internet designer who lived with her parents on the Meriden estate in Watford, Hertfordshire. Anne was described by her identical twin sister, Susan, as, quote, a hard-working, honest and lovely person, end quote. On the afternoon of the 9th of May 2000, Anne was walking her King Charles Spaniel, Alvie, in Mundham Park, a picturesque, busy public park where people felt safe to walk their dogs. At roughly 5:30 that afternoon, police attending another incident nearby were approached by a dog walker who informed them that he'd discovered a body in Mundham Park. 2 police officers left the scene and followed the man into Mundham Park, where the body of what they described as a young girl lay. That evening, the individual was identified as 35-year-old Anne Cook, and the cause of death was revealed to be a stab wound to her chest. Anne's dog, Alvie, who was standing over her body when officers discovered the scene, was taken to the vet so that teeth impressions could be taken in case he'd bitten Anne's killer. Meanwhile, officers interviewed witnesses to get a better picture of that afternoon, including the man who had initially found the body and alerted police. Scenes of crime officers attended the scene, searching for any forensic evidence that could lead them to Anne's killer. Whilst the dog walker who found Anne's body was a person of interest, police also had to consider that her killer was potentially someone she knew. They worked with Anne's family to paint a picture of her background and investigated her job, ex-boyfriends, and computer and mobile usage, all to no avail. All potential leads were followed up, however there were no unusual patterns of behaviour that needed a closer look, or suspicious ex-boyfriends. The only unusual thing police could find was that Anne had had a premonition that she was going to be attacked by a stranger, and she was so afraid and paranoid that her brother-in-law had given her a pocket knife to carry around with her. Anne's twin sister, Susan, was completely distraught by her sister's murder, and, with no leads, she made an emotional public appeal for any information that would help identify her sister's killer. As a result of this appeal, police were given several names of people who were investigated by police. The most interesting lead to come from this appeal was a witness who described a male running away from the scene across the M1 motorway and up the embankment the other side onto the Meriden estate, which backed on to Mundham Park. Knowing the man would have had to run across the back of some gardens on the estate, police knocked on doors on that road the evening Anne was murdered. One witness recalled seeing a man in a white vest splattered with blood at the bottom of her garden, which led police to believe that the individual lived on the estate, as only a local would know how to access the area. The following day, police knocked on every door on the Meriden estate, searching for further witnesses and information. While nothing came of the house-to-house inquiries, knowing the man seen running across the M1 around the time of the murder could have been their suspect, the motorway was closed one morning, so forensic teams could thoroughly search the area in which he was seen. As a result of the search, which covered the central reservation and both verges, police uncovered a large kitchen knife covered in blood on the opposite side of the motorway to where the murder took place. While the knife was sent off for testing, every resident in the local area with a violent criminal record were investigated, with police working through their alibis for the afternoon of the murder. Whilst most had alibis, one person they were struggling to discount from the investigation was a local man who lived on the Meriden estate. Leon Amos was a 35-year-old whose family were well known in the local community and had a reputation for being troublemakers who were in and out of trouble with the police. Leon had been reported hanging around Munden Park that afternoon and then sighted several times on the Meriden estate after the murder. Leon had previous convictions that were of interest to police. In 1985, he had been convicted of raping a young girl and was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Upon release, Leon struck again and attempted to sexually assault another teenage girl, which saw him imprisoned for a further 5 years. While Anne's murder demonstrated no signs of sexual motive, police were keen to track down Leon to count him out of their investigation. However, while before the murder, Leon was regularly seen on the estate and surrounding areas, it appeared he had gone to ground, and police were unable to locate him. Determined to track him down, police spoke to Leon's girlfriend, who denied having any knowledge of where Leon was. Police stepped up their efforts to locate Leon when the blood on the knife was identified as a mixture of Anne Cook's and Leon Amos's, with Leon now becoming their prime suspect. Surveillance teams were deployed to survey Leon's brother Peter on Friday the 12th of May, which led police to Horton Regis in Bedfordshire, where further intelligence suggested that he was staying there with another brother and the pair may have been harbouring Leon. 9 days following the brutal murder of Anne Cook, a major arrest operation saw Leon, both his brothers, his parents and his girlfriend arrested, with all properties searched. Leon's other brother, Jerry, lived on the Meriden estate, and a search of his flat saw the discovery of Anne Cook's phone hidden under his bed.
This episode was made possible by Podgo. Podgo is the easiest way for you to begin monetizing your podcast, whether you're big or small. Podgo provides podcasters with a flat rate for ad space, so you always know how much you get when you include an ad from Podgo. I recently joined as a member, and you can too. Apply today at podgo.co to become a member and immediately be connected with advertisers that fit your audience. That's podgo.co.
Leon, who had been taken to Hatfield Police Station and subsequently questioned by Detective Constable Graham Smith, denied any involvement in Anne's murder and told police that he was just walking in Munden Park that afternoon when he came across the body and stole both Anne's phone and the murder weapon. He was unable to explain why he had run across the M1 and discarded the knife, however explained that he gave the phone to his brother in hopes that he would sell it for him. Jerry and Peter had tried selling the phone to a group of children the day after the murder. However, when they noticed dried blood on the phone, the children ended the transaction. At roughly 8 p.m. on Sunday the 21st of May, Leon Amos was charged with the murder of Anne Cook, and subsequently both brothers, Peter and Jerry Amos, were charged with assisting an offender and perverting the course of justice. Leon was remanded in custody pending his trial. It was established that Anne had put up a fight in an attempt to ward off her attacker, with her punching Leon in the face, leaving him with a black eye, and the pocket knife she had been given by her brother-in-law found underneath her body. It's believed that Leon, who had already stalked another woman that afternoon, mistook Anne for a teenage girl, and that he had gone out that afternoon for one reason: to attack and rape an innocent young woman. It's believed that he came across Anne, however she fought back, causing Leon to stab her in the chest with a 6-inch kitchen knife that had been taken from a set of kitchen knives found at his girlfriend's house. On the 30th of January 2001, Leon's murder trial began at Reading Crown Court, prosecuted by Brian Escott Cox QC, who described the cover-up of the crime as, quote, a coolly calculated conspiracy, end quote, and Howard Godfrey QC for the defence. Several witnesses who had seen Leon and his brothers in the area on the afternoon of the murder testified against him, along with some of the teenagers the brothers had tried to sell Anne's phone to. On day 6 of the trial, a senior court reporting officer for the Forensic Science Service, Frank Gore, discussed the blood found on the knife and told the court that the probability of another match, quote, at random of somebody unrelated is 1 in 1,000 million, end quote. He described the knife to the court, quote, this is a good quality kitchen knife laser, 7 single-edge blade, with a fine cutting edge, about 15 centimetres long and 2.8 centimetres wide. The cutting edge of the blade is sharp, end quote. After deliberating for just over 4 hours, the jury of 6 men and 5 women found Leon Amos guilty of the murder of Anne Cook on the 20th of February 2001. 2 days later, on the 22nd of February, Mr. Justice Garland sentenced Leon to life in prison with a minimum term of 20 years, where he was described as the worst kind of sexual offender who was a danger to all young women. Both brothers were found guilty of assisting an offender and perverting the course of justice, with Peter being sentenced to 1 month and Jerry being sentenced to 21 months in prison. Women have felt unsafe for decades. When Peter Sutcliffe reigned his terror over Yorkshire in the 1970s, women were advised to remain home at night and to only leave the house in the dark if they were accompanied by a male they knew. For decades, the prevailing belief has been that we must educate women on how to remain safe while out in the dark. Carry your keys between your fingers, buy a rape alarm, lock your car doors as soon as you get in. Don't use your headphones when walking alone so you can remain aware of your surroundings. Learn self-defense mechanisms. There are so many manners in which women are taught to ensure their safety whilst out alone and in the dark. However, maybe it's time to stop telling women how they can stay safe, and rather teaching men about boundaries, what is classed as sexual harassment and assault, and how they can ensure women feel safe. It's all well and good not being a rapist, being a man women can trust, but now we need more than you being a good guy. We need you to act. We need you to hold yourself and your friends accountable. When your friends make sexual comments or display sexual harassment behaviours, whether physically towards a woman or behind closed doors, hold them accountable. Question their beliefs, words and actions. Challenge their catcalling. If you're walking behind a lone woman at night, keep your distance. Don't run up behind a woman at night. Slow down, cross the road, leave enough space so she doesn't feel threatened. If you notice a woman is uncomfortable, intervene, ask if she's okay, try and create some distance between her and the individual making her feel uncomfortable. Don't argue with us, don't question our fear, don't downplay or undermine our experiences. We've never said all men. We've never said men don't also feel unsafe. The current conversation surrounds women. Don't try and change the conversation to be about men. It's not all men, but it's 97% of women.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to head over to Apple Podcasts to leave a rating and review, and Patreon to consider becoming a patron of Murder and More. As a patron, for just $2 a month, you get access to episodes early and ad-free, and you get a sticker sent to you. The link to my Patreon can be found in my show notes. To interact with us, you can follow us on Twitter and Tumblr at Murder and More, Instagram at Murder and More Pod, and Facebook at Murder and More Podcast. To view the sources and pictures for this episode, head over to www.murderandmorepodcast.wordpress.com. Have an amazing few weeks, stay safe, and I'll see you all in 2 weeks for another episode.
Do you want to know about crimes and cases that you haven't heard anywhere else? Are you interested in the stories of missing people and unsolved cases? And do you love UK true crime? The Unseen is the podcast for you. Every fortnight, I, Caprice, take you through the stories of those that have been forgotten about, the stories that deserve attention, no matter how little we know or how long ago they happened. Everyone deserves to have their stories told. You might not already know the cases, but you won't forget them. Find The Unseen on all platforms wherever you listen. I can't wait to have you with us next time.